Chapter 1. Annabelle's POV. After breakfast, Mom and I cleaned the dishes. Ford was still sleeping in his room, and Dad was sorting out last-minute things for Elliot and I. Elliot is the alpha of our royal pack. He is by far the greatest leader and fighter. Also, he is really close to my family, and this is why he is going with me. We are planning to travel around to find my mate. We will visit each pack and sniff around. Well, literally. Because, as a werewolf, I can smell my mate and instantly know that it's him. Quite a useful ability, isn't it? And Elliot needed to meet up with other alphas anyway, so it more like killing two birds with one stone. Party time. I heard a voice yelling. I heard the door close, and footsteps started coming towards us. Mom and I were watching television in the living room. We both turned around, and Elliot entered the room. "Elliot?" I exclaimed. I jumped off the couch to hug him. Elliot chuckled and embraced me with his arms. "Well, to be honest, I am a bit jealous," a female voice said. I turned and saw Alyssa, who is Elliot's mate. I pulled away from Elliot and gently hugged Alyssa. "Just kidding. I'm not a jealous person, you know," Alyssa teased. I smiled as I moved away from her. "But you are indeed pregnant," I said. Elliot and Mom chuckled while nodding in agreement. "Isn't she due in a few weeks?" Mom asked. Alyssa nodded and patted her belly. "Have you thought of any names?" Alyssa opened her mouth, but Elliot cut her off before she could speak. "His name is gonna be Elliot Jr., he stated proudly. Alyssa hit his arm. "For the last time. It's a girl. How many times do we have to say it, so that it gets through your thick alpha skull?" Alyssa said, exasperated. "What are you naming her?" I asked Alyssa. Elliot glared at me, and I smiled innocently at him. "Well, this guy," she pointed at Elliot with her thumb, "wanted a Elliot Jr. So I compromised." "Eleanor," she said with a smile. Mom squealed like a teenager. Elliot chuckled and kissed Alyssa. I fake gagged. "Gross. PDA," I shouted, covering my eyes. Everyone started laughing. I opened my eyes just as Dad entered the room. "Elliot?" They did the bro hug thing. "Hello, Alyssa," Dad said and kissed her cheek. "Hello, Bill," Alyssa said. "Elliot needed to talk to you about alpha stuff, and I wanted to hand this over to Anna." Alyssa held up a small box. I smiled. "It's so nice of you to bring me a gift, Alyssa. You didn't have to get me anything, you know," I said and pulled her into a hug. Alyssa laughed. "I knew. You will be happy that I did, though." She passed the box to me. It was wrapped in light blue wrapping paper and a little white bow. I pulled off the bow and undid the wrapping. It was a black jewelry box. I looked up at Alyssa, and she looked excited. I slowly opened the box and gasped. It was a white gold charm bracelet. There were 5 charms. The letters G and B connected, a small wolf, a crown, a simple heart, and a butterfly. It was beautiful. I just stood there and gaped at it. "Do you like it?" Alyssa asked in a nervous tone. I looked up at her and nodded. "I love it, Alyssa." I put the jewelry on the table and hugged her. "It's beautiful. It looked better in silver, but..." She trailed off. I laughed. "We are werewolves. Silver is the top enemy for us. It sucks that we can't touch something so beautiful. But I still have silver jewelry. It's just not real. Real silver is absolutely stunning, though." "It was my idea," Elliot claimed. I laughed and gave him a hug. Alyssa hit Elliot's arm again. "Don't lie. Your only idea was the letters," she scoffed. "It was still a good idea, don't you think?" Elliot argued. Everyone laughed. I wrapped my arms around his waist. "It was a great idea." "Thanks, Elliot," I said sincerely. Elliot grinned. "Thanks, kiddo." I frowned at the nickname. He laughed. "Sorry, you're still a kid. Legally, you're an adult. But to me, an adult is someone who can go bar hopping." "I can go bar hopping," I stated. "It just won't be legal. By human laws. Then that would be illegal." "But we are gonna go pack hopping," he said with a smile. "What is that?" "What is pack hopping?" Dad voiced my thoughts. "Like bar hopping, but with packs," Elliot explained. Everyone just stared at him. "Going from pack to pack, so we're just like hopping between packs." Elliot was referring to our journey. Alyssa squealed. "I forgot about that. He's gonna be the best mate ever. If she wasn't pregnant, I could totally imagine her jumping up and down like a teenager." "Wow, that's not offensive," Elliot pouted. Alyssa kissed him and he smiled. The power of the mate bond right there. I'm gonna have a talk with him before anything happens. Elliot cracked his knuckles. His mate narrowed her eyes at him. You're gonna chase away her mate before I get to meet him? Alyssa exclaimed. Elliot paled. Don't make a female werewolf mad, especially when she is pregnant and if she is a Luna. I'll just make sure that he's good for Anna, he defended. Alyssa whacked the back of his head. Of course he's good for her. The moon goddess wouldn't pick someone that's not good enough for Anna. She is such a good girl, so her mate must be perfect. Alyssa threw her hands up, exasperated. Let's go talk about that alpha stuff, Dad said to Elliot. Finally, I got saved. Elliot nodded and they walked off. What do you want to do now? Alyssa asked. I actually have no idea. It's my birthday. I had an amazing breakfast. I hung out with my family. I didn't have any other plans for today. I should pack for the trip though. But what am I gonna wear? Shopping trip, I said. Alyssa and Mom smiled and we left to go to the mall. I ended up getting a few nice shirts, 2 leather jackets, a couple of dresses, and new boots. My mom, Alyssa, and I walked in the house. Elliot and Dad were still talking. How much did they have to discuss? We've been gone for hours. They are just finalizing details for the trip, Mom reassured me. I nodded and went to my bedroom. I packed my new clothes mixed with some of my favorite outfits. I put all my necessities into a separate bag and set the bags by my bed. Knock. 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 Come in, I called, lying on my bed. I heard the door creak open. Anna? Ford walked in. I sat up and leaned against the headboard. Ford climbed onto my bed and rested his head on my lap. How was your nap? I asked while running my hand through his blonde locks. I'm still sleepy, he mumbled. I chuckled and kissed the top of his head. Anna? I hummed in response. Mommy said that you're leaving. I felt something wet on my legs. I stopped playing with his hair, and I pulled him off my legs. Ford had tears streaming down his cheeks. I pulled him onto my lap and wiped his face. I kissed his head. Don't be silly, Ford. I'm just leaving for a little while. I gave him a small smile. To find my mate, I told him. Ford frowned. But Daddy always told us that outside isn't safe, he sniffled. My mate will protect me. And Elliot is coming with me, I assured him. But what about Aunt Alyssa? Isn't she gonna miss him? He questioned. I nodded. So you'll have to keep her company. You have to keep Mommy company too. Yeah, 'cause her and Daddy will miss you. He started playing with the hem of my shirt. I'm gonna miss you too. Ford sniffled and started crying again. I shushed him and rocked him in my lap. I'll be back very soon. I promise. Ford nodded and he fell back asleep in my arms. Not long after, I found myself drifting asleep. This is the last night in my bed for at least a month. The last night in my room. The last night with Ford. Then everything will change. I will be queen and I will have a mate. With those thoughts, I drifted off to sleep. Chapter 2. Annabelle's POV. Anna, someone lightly shook me. Time to get up. I slowly opened my eyes and saw my mom standing over my bed. Elliot's here. He's waiting for you, she informed me. I nodded and she walked out. I carefully got out of bed, making sure that I didn't wake up Ford. He stirred, but didn't awaken. I sighed and got dressed for the day. I walked to the kitchen in light gray sweats, a white crop top, and my white Converse. Elliot was sitting at the table with my parents. All 3 heads snapped up to me when I walked inside the room. I dragged my bags to the wall and sat at the table. Are you ready? Mom asked. I honestly have no idea. I was ready to leave, but am I ready to meet my mate? The one person who loves me forever. My other half. Someone who was literally made for me. I want to meet him, but does he want to meet me? Of course he wants to meet us. He's our mate. Mia, my wolf, shouted at me. I blocked her out so I wouldn't be able to hear her voice. I nodded at my mother. As ready as I'll ever be. I gave her a small smile, which she returned. Elliot and my parents slowly stood up. My mom walked over to me and engulfed me in a bear hug. Be careful. Call us when you get to the first pack, Mom whispered in my ears. I nodded and she pulled away. Good luck, she said with a small smile. I wrapped my arms around her waist one last time, and she kissed my head. Honey, she'll be back soon. A few months top, Dad said. Mom nodded and let go of me. I quickly turned to my father and buried my face in his chest while he hugged me. Stay with Elliot at all times. Never go anywhere alone. I nodded in his chest and he pulled away. I love you, princess. He kissed my forehead. Love you too, Dad, I said and grabbed my bags. I turned to Elliot, who was patiently waiting for me. Dad walked up to Elliot and they firmly shook hands. Take care of my daughter. I don't care that you're my best friend. I will hunt you down and rip off your head with my teeth if anything happens to her, Dad threatened. Elliot paled and nodded. Have fun, Dad said with a smile on his face. My father changes emotions very quickly. I hugged both my parents and walked out with Elliot. We are going to be staying with each pack for a few days, Elliot informed me as we slid into the car. I nodded and rested my head on the window. I tried to go to sleep, but my mind wouldn't let me. I kept thinking about my mate, what he looks like. How old is he? What rank is he? What's his favorite color? What's his favorite movie? I sighed and gave up on sleep. We still have another hour until we get to the pack lines, Elliot told me. I shifted in my seat so I was sitting crisscross in the chair. What pack is first? I asked. Elliot grabbed a piece of paper from the center console and handed it to me. It was filled with dates, names, and packs. Midnight Howlers. I read the first name. Elliot nodded. We have to go to a meeting with them when we arrive. I looked at him confused and curious. We? I asked. Elliot just nodded. Why am I going to be there? I questioned. A meeting sounds boring. Exploring and finding my mate sounds much better. As the head alpha, I have to inform them about a new law. But you're going to be there because I don't want you alone, he said. I nodded in understanding. He has to protect me. What's the new law? I asked. Elliot's eyes got darker and his grip on the wheel got tighter. Elliot? I asked. He looked over at me and his expression softened. Only an alpha and his true mate can lead a pack as their alpha and Luna, Elliot stated. My eyebrows knitted together in confusion. Why are you upset? Aren't you all about that mates being together? I questioned. I am. I just can't believe that an alpha would choose someone who isn't his true mate as his Luna, he said, exasperated. If she was supposed to be a Luna, then the moon goddess would have chosen her to be his mate. It's not like his mate was unfit to be a Luna. He's just another power-hungry alpha. Elliot ranted. Someone who isn't meant to took the place as a Luna? I asked, shocked. Elliot nodded. Why would they even do that? I threw my hands up and dropped them on my lap. 'Cause they wanted more power. Elliot's grip on the wheel got tighter, so his knuckles were turning white. Two alphas made a treaty. Their son and daughter will marry to join the packs, but both of them had already had mates. They just weren't fully mated, Elliot explained. I nodded for him to continue. So the son and daughter mated, and they united the pack. But they both have alpha blood, so the pack suffered. Two born alphas can't rule one pack, especially if they're not mates. If they were true mates, there would be a possibility it would work. However, it would be difficult. All alphas are dominant. They wouldn't want to work together. So that's why the council created the law, I said. Elliot shook his head. So why? I inquired. That is only part of the reason. The pack suffered, but so did their mates. Their mates died, Elliot said. I gasped. After you meet your mate, there is instantly a bond created. You can feel each other's emotions and pain and physical things. When the alphas mated, their true mates felt it. They lost a part of themselves. I nodded, unable to form words. That's not even the worst part, Elliot shouted. I gaped at him. It gets worse? I asked. Elliot rubbed the top of his head with his hand and sighed. She was pregnant, he stated. I looked at him confused. The son's mate. She was pregnant when she died? Elliot said softly. My blood boiled. So their stupid treaty killed two mates and an unborn child? I shouted. That's why we got the new law, Elliot finished. I let it all sink in. A child. Just for power. All of that for power. Letting your pack suffer. Killing your own mate. Killing a child. That kid didn't even have a chance to live. Didn't have a chance to meet its mate. Didn't have a chance to shift for the first time. The kid didn't even get to meet its mom. They ruined lives. All for nothing. Their plan failed, and they just suffered. How could someone do that? To their own flesh and blood. To their family. To the one person that was made just for you. Elliot and I sat the rest of the ride in silence. We're here. Elliot stopped the car just outside a forest. I nodded and he took out his phone and dialed a number. Hello, it's Alpha Garfield. We just arrived. All right. I grant you and your guest permission to enter my territory, a male voice said through the phone. Elliot thanked him and hung up. After he hung up, I borrowed his phone to quickly call my parents. We continued driving for another half hour until we stopped in front of a 3-story mansion. Typical pack house. Most people would stand in front and gape at the building. But I don't. I live in a castle. I'm used to fancy things. It's also not the best pack house I've seen. Don't get me wrong, it's beautiful. But I've seen every other pack house, and it's not the best. It has a lot of character though. Come on. We'll get the bags later, Elliot said, walking toward the front door. We stopped at the front and Elliot turned to me. Do you smell anything? He asked. I inhaled through my nose. I smelt werewolves, pine, chocolate, and cookies. Yeah, chocolate. It's not my mate though. Elliot's scent smells like chocolate. It always makes me hungry. My stomach growled and Elliot chuckled. Do you smell anything other than my scent? He said with a grin. I shook my head. He's gonna be in one of these packs. Elliot gave me a reassuring smile. I smiled back and he knocked on the double doors. A woman with dark brown hair and bright hazel eyes opened the door. Hello, you must be Alpha Garfield. I'm Haley Woods, the Luna. She stuck her hand out for Elliot to shake. Elliot took her hand in his. Please, call me Elliot. Alpha Garfield makes me feel old, Elliot joked. Haley laughed and Elliot turned to me. This is my niece, Annabelle? Niece? I asked Elliot through our mind link. Your father wants your identity to be hidden. No one needs to know that the princess is out of the castles, Elliot replied. That makes sense. Not everyone likes the king and queen. Hello, I'm Haley. She introduced herself again. It's nice to meet you, Annabelle. I cringed at my full name. Just Anna, please, I said with a small laugh. Haley nodded and opened the door wider, motioning for us to come inside. Justin is in his office. Would you like something to drink? She asked. Me and Elliot shook our heads. Alrighty then. Follow me. She walked upstairs and stopped in front of a wooden door. Come in, a male voice said from inside. Haley opened the door and we walked inside with her. I glanced around the office. There were shelves of books and pictures. He had a shiny dark brown desk that matched the dark brown coffee table and a black leather couch. Alpha Garfield is here, Haley stated. The man turned in his chair, so he was facing us. I'm Alpha Justin Woods. The man stood up from his chair and took 2 steps around the desk. Elliot Garfield. Elliot shook hands with the Alpha. This is my niece. God, not the full name. Anna, I cut him off. I shook hands with Justin and he motioned for us to sit on the leather couch. Haley and he sat in the love seat, as Elliot and I sat on the 3-person couch. You said you have news from the council, Justin said, getting straight to business. Elliot nodded. Are you 2 mates? Elliot asked. The couple looked at each other and smiled, then turned back to us and nodded. True mates? Elliot questioned. Where are you going with this? Haley asked, confused and slightly wary. The council has passed a new law. Only a true Alpha and Luna may lead a pack, Elliot said. The couple didn't look surprised at all. The Alpha nodded. This is about the Forest Wanderer and the Hollow Moon Pack, Justin stated. Elliot nodded. Those poor kids, Justin said sadly. Was that the only news? Haley asked. Elliot nodded. If it is no trouble, my niece and I would like to stay for tonight. Haley quickly nodded her head. No trouble at all. The head Alpha is always welcome in our home, Haley said. We actually have gotten 2 rooms set up already, she stated. Haley wanted to be prepared for your arrival. She even stocked the fridge and told the teens not to eat any of the food. She used her Luna voice. Justin laughed. Haley turned red from embarrassment and slapped Justin's arm. Would you like a tour? Haley asked. Elliot said that he needed to discuss some final things with Justin. She turned to me. Want a tour? I can introduce you to some people, Haley offered. I looked at Elliot, who nodded at me in approval. Sure, thanks, I said. I followed her out the office and into the hallway. She gave me a tour of the 2nd story, that consisted of other offices, a few bathrooms, and hospital rooms. The house was a pretty basic pack house. There were rooms for teen girls, Rooms for teen guys, rooms for mates, and there was a whole floor just for the alpha, beta, and gamma families. Are you hungry? Haley asked. I nodded eagerly, causing her to laugh. It's not my fault. I'm hungry. I didn't eat breakfast. We can make some sandwiches, Haley said while we walked down the stairs. She led me into the kitchen where someone was making food. He looked to be around my age. He had dark-colored hair and his abs were visible through his white shirt. Saying he was hot would be like saying sugar is kind of sweet. The understatement of the world. He looked up and noticed Haley and I. He smiled at me, but paled when he saw his Luna. Lauren Hills, Haley shouted. I awkwardly shifted from foot to foot. What are you doing? Making a sandwich, he said in a duh tone. Haley walked to his side of the counter and smacked the back of his head. "Ikon," he exclaimed. What part of no one better eat the food or I will personally rip your head off with my human teeth did you not understand? She crossed her arms and waited for him to answer. When he didn't, she continued. I will not rip your head off since you are my son's friend. But you will make this girl a sandwich, she motioned to me. Lauren's head snapped up to me. Hey, I'm Lauren. Aunt for short. He winked at me. Flirt much? I looked at him questionably. Aunt? Like the bug? I asked. Haley chuckled. 'Cause he likes to bug the crap out of people. Aunt and I stared at her while she laughed at her own joke. Tough crowd, she mumbled, walking out the kitchen. So, that was weird? Aunt stated while starting to make another sandwich. I sat on the stood by the kitchen island. Yeah, is she always like that? I asked. Aunt chuckled and nodded. Most of the time. She's kinda scary sometimes, he admitted. So, what's your name? Annabelle. Anna for short. I mocked his words. He smiled and handed me a plate with a sandwich. Thanks, no problem. Are you new? He asked. I shook my head. Just passing through? I stated vaguely. Aunt's eyes went wide and he stared at me. You're her, aren't you? He asked with a smirk. I looked at him confused. Who's her? I questioned. The princess, he shouted. I put my hand over his mouth and he licked it. I shrieked and wiped my hand on his shirt. Gross. Why would you lick someone's hand? Especially if you just met them. So you are, he exclaimed. Shut up, I scolded him. He frowned. Sorry, it's just that no one is supposed to know who I am. How do you know? I asked. Aunt shrugged. Word travels fast around packs. I gaped at him. I'm in such big trouble and danger. And trouble. No one was supposed to know that I left the castle. Anna? Elliot's voice echoed through the kitchen. I couldn't say anything. She's in the kitchen, Aunt yelled. Elliot walked into the kitchen and looked from me to Aunt. His mouth was moving, but I couldn't hear him saying anything. Black dots started clouding my vision. Nothing mattered. People knew that I was out. People would be out to get me. It wasn't safe anymore. I would probably have to go back home, mateless. Elliot stood in front of me and gripped my shoulders. Annabelle, what's wrong? Concern was clear in his voice. I knew what was happening. I was going into shock. I could only force 2 words out of my mouth. They know. Then darkness took over. Chapter 3. Annabelle's POV. I slowly opened my eyes and a bright light blinded me. I groaned and threw my arm over my face. I heard shuffling, then Elliot's voice. Anna, you're awake. Doc, he exclaimed. His shouting made my head start pounding, causing me to grunt. I reopened my eyes and saw Elliot standing above me. There was a familiar-looking teenager sitting in the chair by the bed I was on. Aunt. I looked around and noticed the familiar decor of a hospital room. There were more bed and chairs, a few curtains, and white walls. Hello, Annabelle. I'm the pack doctor. A woman with black glasses walked into the room with her hair in a messy bun. Do you feel any pain? She asked, white shining a small flashlight in my eyes. I shook my head but winced when it pounded. I held my head in my hands. My head, I groaned. What's wrong with her head? She's in pain. Help her, Elliot shouted at the doctor. I groaned and tightly shut my eyes, waiting for the pain to stop. I think you're making her head hurt, Aunt said. Elliot scoffed and Lauren chuckled. I think your presence is making her head hurt, Elliot childishly shot back. The 2 males started arguing back and forth, making my head hurt even more. Stop. I shouted, making everyone freeze. Everyone out, I ordered. Elliot was about to say something, but I gave him a don't argue with me look. He sighed and everyone began walking out. Wait, I exclaimed, causing them to stop in front of the door. I need the doctor. The woman nodded and walked away from the door. What can I do for you? The doctor kindly asked while walking towards my bed. My head is pounding, I informed her. She nodded and gave me a small smile. The two idiots that just left, she pointed to the door. I smiled. They let your head hit the ground when you fainted. You didn't have any nutrients. Then it was probably added on stress that caused you to faint. There were no other injuries, so you are free to leave, she said. I ground my teeth together in annoyance. They are werewolves. They are fast enough to catch my head. Stupid boys. Do you have something for the pain? I asked the doctor. She nodded and walked to the other side of the room. When she returned, she handed me 2 small pills and a bottle of water. It will take a while to kick in, but it should help. I nodded and washed the pills down with some water. Thanks, doctor. Doctor? I trailed off, not knowing her name. She smiled at me. Dr. Layla Jefferson, she said. I nodded at her and looked out the window. The sun was shining brightly. What time is it? I asked Layla. She pulled out her phone and showed it to me. 30:28 p.m. I've been out all day? I asked. Layla nodded. You passed out yesterday evening? I sighed, knowing that Elliot and I were supposed to be at another pack by now. Can you tell Elliot to come back, please? I asked Layla. He's the older idiot, I added with a smile. Layla chuckled and walked out the room. A minute later, Elliot came in and hugged the air out of my system. Can't breathe, I choked out. Elliot chuckled and let go of me. First you let me hit my head, now you're trying to suffocate me to death, I teased. Elliot's face got serious, and he had a guilty look on his face. I didn't know what to do. You just said that they know. Who are they? He asked. I sighed, knowing that I would have to tell him sooner or later. Word got out that the princess left her castle, I said quietly. How? He growled in anger. I have no idea. Lauren knew. He asked me if I was the princess, I informed him. We are going back, Elliot decided, leaving barely any room for an argument. We are not going back. I'm supposed to find my mate. I'm not going back until I know who he is, I said defiantly. Elliot rubbed his hands down his face. It's not safe anymore. I'm bringing you back. He started to walk to the door. If you make me leave, I started. When he stopped, I continued. I'll tell Alyssa that you let me hit my head on the extremely hard tile floor, I threatened. Elliot froze and thought it over for a second. Compromise? He asked. I nodded and he sat in the chair by my bed. We finished the trip, but we get more warriors. I nodded. Anything is better than leaving. We can't tell my father, I stated. Elliot shook his head. Alyssa is 1 phone call away, I warned. Elliot sighed. I can't lie to your father. He's the king, he stated. I shrugged. I didn't say anything about lying. Just don't tell him about it. You can tell him if he directly asks you about it. I compromised. Elliot nodded. I'll go call Johnny. He started to get up, but I tugged on his arm. I shook my head. You can't bring Johnny over here. He's the beta. He needs to watch over the pack. You can't leave a pack without a beta or an alpha, especially if there is an extremely pregnant and angry Luna. Spike? Elliot asked. Head warrior. He might be needed, I stated. He rubbed his bald head. Well, who then? Elliot asked. I thought over it for a moment. Thomas, I stated. Elliot looked confused. Johnny's son, I explained with a yawn. Elliot nodded and typed something on his phone. All right, but there will be rules, Elliot stated. I nodded for him to continue. No going anywhere without Thomas or me. Tell me about everything that happens, even if it is just a hunch. Tell me, is that all? I asked. Elliot nodded. When are we leaving? I asked after a few minutes of silence. Tomorrow morning. Thomas should be here by then. I nodded and fell asleep. Chapter 4. Annabelle's POV. Elliot woke me up at 4 a.m. I almost got 12 whole hours of sleep, but we needed to head to the next pack. Thomas arrived around midnight. Elliot filled him in on all the talk about the princess, and Thomas was glad to help the royal family. Babes, Thomas shouted when I slid into the back seat of the car. Don't get the wrong idea. Thomas and I aren't together or anything. We are just good friends. We grew up together. My parents, his parents, and Elliot and Alyssa are best friends. So when they needed to have meetings, Thomas and I hung out. Alpha and beta bloodlines always become best friends. It's a good thing since they'll be running a pack together. Coco, I exclaimed. Thomas pouted at the nickname, and Elliot chuckled. So, aw, did Coco get his feeling hurt? I imitated a child's voice. Thomas glared at me. Why do you even call him that? Elliot asked as he started the car. Thomas groaned and I laughed. Smell him, I told Elliot. He sniffed the air and shrugged. He smells like coconuts, I exclaimed. But you call him Coco? Elliot asked. I nodded. Coconut is too long, I explained. Elliot shook his head with a chuckle and we fell into a nice silence. I slowly drifted off into dreamland. You wake her up, a voice said, interrupting my dream. Stupid Thomas. Why won't you? Another voice asked. And that's Elliot. Does it look like I want to get punched? Thomas asked. I'm not that violent. Elliot chuckled. Wimp. I heard a smack. Then Elliot groaned. Fine. I'll do it, Elliot said. I heard 2 doors open and close. Then the door next to me opened. I felt Elliot come closer to me. Boo, I shouted. Both men screamed, and Elliot jumped, hitting his head on the ceiling of his car. Damn it, Anna, Elliot exclaimed, rubbing his bald head. Your faces, priceless, I choked out between laughs. Elliot and Thomas glared at me until my laughter died down. We're at the Silver Stream Pack, Elliot announced. I nodded and finally got out the car. Together, we walked to the front door of the pack house. I sniffed around. No mate. Elliot had the meeting with the Alpha and Luna, while Thomas and I hung out at some cafe. We were in the pack territory for about 2 hours until the meeting was over. Elliot picked us up, and we headed to the next pack. It was a pretty boring day. Unfortunately, that's how the rest of the trip went for about 6 more packs. Still no mate. We went through almost half the packs in a week, and I still didn't find him. We left the Moonhowler pack and headed for the Sunset Guardian pack. The plan was to go to this pack, then back to the castle. Alyssa was getting restless, so we changed the schedule a little. If I didn't find my mate by the time we went back to the castle, I would continue this trip with Elliot. What if I don't find him? I asked Thomas. Elliot left Thomas and I in the car while he got drinks and snacks from the gas station. Thomas turned around and studied me for a moment before answering. He has to be out there somewhere. We still have a few more packs, so don't give up hope, he assured me. My mind was focused on the thought of my mate. I haven't found him. What if he's not alive? What if he died? I quietly voiced my thoughts. It's practically impossible to find a second chance mate. The bond isn't as strong. Plus, you only get a second chance if your mate dies. Someone who met their mate only to lose that person wouldn't want to replace them in any way. Stop thinking the worst. It's not healthy, Thomas scolded me. I was about to argue when Elliot entered the car. He gave Thomas a monster and plain potato chips. He threw the plastic bag in the back seat, next to me. I got you orange Fanta, hot Cheetos, and a pack of gum, Elliot told me. I thanked him and opened the gum. How come she got more stuff than me? Thomas whined as Elliot started the car. 'Cause you're annoying, and she's the princess, Elliot said. Thomas glared at me and I threw a piece of gum at his face. Thanks, babe, Thomas exclaimed and popped the gum in his mouth. I laughed. This trip would be so boring if it was just Mr. Grumpy and I. I pointed at Elliot. He grunted and glared at me. I'm not grumpy, he muttered. Fine. Mr. Paul, Thomas teased. I will throw you out of this car, Elliot threatened. Thomas looked at me and smirked. I smiled and put my head in between the 2 front seats. If you throw him out, then I'll have to go with him since we're best friends and all. We gotta stick together. And I don't think that Alyssa would like you leaving me in the middle of nowhere, I said innocently. Elliot instantly paled. Mates have so much power over each other, even if they are alphas. But since Alyssa is pregnant, you have to be very careful with her. Once, someone finished her croutons and she trashed the whole kitchen. Then she cried, a lot. She bawled her eyes out. Elliot had no idea what to do. She told him to leave her alone, but when he started to leave, she threw a dining chair at him. It was one of the funniest things ever. You two suck. Elliot childishly pouted. Thomas grinned. You swallow. Elliot slammed down on the brakes and we burst out laughing. Elliot glared at us before he started driving again. It wasn't even that funny. Elliot frowned. Thomas and I stopped laughing. But whenever I looked at Elliot, I started laughing again. Are we there yet? Thomas asked after half an hour of riding in the car. Elliot glared at him. Does it look like we're there? Elliot snapped. I was just asking. I rolled my eyes. Yeah, for like the 20th time in the past 10 minutes? I said, exasperated. Thomas mumbled something about me and Elliot being jerks. How long till we get there? Thomas asked. Elliot stopped the car and pulled out his phone. This is Alpha Garfield. We're at the pack lines. The other caller said something too low to be heard. Elliot ended the call and started driving again. About 15 minutes later, we pulled up to the pack house. Once the door opened, the most intoxicating smell entered my nose. Mate, Mia shouted. I inhaled the scent of citrus and grass before getting out the car. I walked faster to catch up to Elliot and Thomas, who were already at the front door. I can't believe that he's here. Took you long enough, Thomas said. I jammed my elbow into his side. Violent, he said as he rubbed his side. The door opened, and a guy around my age came into view. Alpha Garfield? The guy asked. Elliot nodded, and the guy stuck his hand out to shake. I'm Beta Daniel, BB Thomas said through the mind link. I bit my lip to keep myself from laughing in front of the beta. Thomas definitely brings out my childish side. This is one of my warriors and my niece. Thomas and Annabelle? Elliot introduced us. The beta shook hands with us and opened the door wider so we could step inside. My mate's scent got stronger when we stepped inside. The Alpha has some personal business to take care of. He should be back in an hour or two, Daniel explained. I can give you a tour in the meantime, he offered. Sure, Elliot said politely. Elliot isn't the rude type. Even if Daniel is younger and a lower rank, he still treats him with the same respect he gives everyone else. Daniel led us around the first floor, but I couldn't focus on anything except the smell of my mate. We went upstairs, and the smell got stronger. I found myself inhaling as much air as I could. It was addicting. Mia kept begging me to look for our mate, but much to her annoyance, I started to block her out of my mind. Sweet 6, Anna. Thomas gently elbowed me. I looked around and saw that Daniel, Elliot, and Thomas were staring at me. I froze. What happened? I asked, confused. Daniel asked you where you got your jacket. His mate wants one, Elliot explained. Oh, Nordstrom, I said. Daniel nodded and we continued to walk. What's wrong with you? Thomas asked through the mind link. I was daydreaming, I lied. Were you having fantasies about your mate? Thomas teased. No, I was having fantasies of getting away from yous. I blocked him out before he could reply. So, Elliot, Daniel started. So, Daniel, Elliot replied. I feel like Elliot doesn't act his age. He's more laid back. Oh my gosh, I exclaimed. All three men turned to me. Your names rhyme, I shouted. We all laughed and finished our little tour. When we left upstairs, I could finally focus on something other than my mate. We learned a little about each other, and Daniel was pretty cool. He is 18, he found his mate, and he likes to argue a lot. But it was entertaining to watch him and Thomas bicker back and forth. Elliot went to a guest room to rest, while Thomas and Daniel played video games in the game room. I stayed in the kitchen and played on my phone. I shot out of my seat when the front door opened, and my mate's scent filled the house. I walked to the door and my eyes landed on the hottest guy I have ever seen.